Class 167 on the Golden Doves, or page 94 on the bottom of the page. Unlike halacha, Haggadah is concerned with the transmission of an idea, not a verbal formula. It may be expressed in the narrator's own words, and he may add his own words and explanations, midrashot, because the Haggadah ultimately is a communication, first-person communication of something that the first person has experienced. It could be a historical event like right? Therefore, Haggadah does not require verbal memorization. So if I want to talk to my son about something, I don't memorize beforehand the words that I'm going to tell him. Unlike the biblical elder or the rabbinic scribe of yore, the narrator was not invested with authority. He was simply expressing his own words. And therefore, Haggadah came to signify personal, non-authoritative opinion, right? It's my own opinion, by definition. I'm speaking to somebody, I just saw it was a huge snowstorm in Buffalo, biggest snowstorm I've ever seen. That's my opinion. Maybe you don't think it's the biggest snowstorm. That's okay. Nothing happened, right? If I'm transmitting halacha, the authority of the halacha is by virtue that it was accepted by the yeshivot, right? It was codified by Harambam, so then it has a certain authority. But if I'm expressing my own words, that was the biggest snowstorm I ever saw. You can agree with me. Maybe it is the biggest snowstorm. Maybe it isn't the biggest snowstorm. It's my own opinion, right? Because it's something that I experience. Indeed, the expert on Haggadah is referred to as one who neither prohibits nor permits, declares something to be impure nor impure, right? Nor pure. Right, because Haggadah, I'm not telling you the law is thus and thus, because whatever I think about the law is not necessarily relevant. I have a personal opinion. It was interesting. I heard this rabbi in Israel, and the Dati Leumi has some people who are intelligent in the sense that in the Haredi world, I don't see too much intelligence, unfortunately. I'm just putting it out there. Yeah, I could be wrong. Consider it a Haggadah. I just don't see too many people who have deep ideas, who know how to think about things intelligently. I don't see it. But again, I could be mistaken. And if I'm mistaken, I'm mistaken. But in the Dati Leumi world, I see some people who think about ideas in a very deep, intellectual manner. I don't necessarily agree with them, right? Just because somebody thinks deeply about something doesn't mean I agree with them about what they're saying. So I heard the Rosh Yeshiva of Eli, one of these like Dati Leumi Hesder Yeshivot, and God bless these people. They have such mesirut nefesh for the Jewish people. So many of these soldiers, they go into the battle, and many of them unfortunately die because they're very courageous and they do the most dangerous roles in the army. So really, God bless them. Only good things to say. But he was talking about how among the Ethiopians, the rabbi of the Ethiopians doesn't enter the grave. And the reason he doesn't enter the grave, it's like they act like they're Kohanim, even though they're not Kohanim. And he doesn't enter the grave, and he gave a very intelligent, articulate explanation how death is temporary, and because death is temporary, and he has to look at things from a more bird's eye perspective, so he doesn't enter the grave. And that's wonderful. That's a great intellectual idea. But that's all it is. It has no authority, meaning I can't use that idea as a justification for why a rabbi, whether Ethiopian or otherwise, can't enter a grave. It has nothing to do with halacha. So if somebody took this statement, a very nice explanation, very intellectual, very philosophical, but that has nothing to do with halacha, it has no bearing on halacha. Those words, that explanation, which is very deep and intelligent, has no authority, right? The authority is in the actual halachot, in the Gemara, in Harambam, in the Rif, and that has authority, right? So just to have a great idea, so that's kind of Haggadah. Am I going to make Pesach? Because Rabbi and Eli explained why the Ethiopian rabbis, and he was admiring it. He was saying in a very, shevach, not lignai. No. So you see that you've tell Haggadah, it's so important. So in the case of the rabbi from Eli, who again I respect, I disagree with them, and I don't think we need to justify foreign practices. I don't think that should be our role. We don't need to justify why somebody, a person makes mayim haronim, even when he's not eating. I don't care. It's as a Torah person, I don't care. Sometimes I do mayim haronim 7 times a day because of the 7 days of the week. It doesn't matter to me. I gave you a wonderful, intelligent, articulate explanation, but that has no authority. So the idea, Haggadah can be very intelligent, very articulate. It doesn't have authority, right? The authority lies in the halakha. Conversely, since halakha only repeats the words of the rabbinic authority, it came to signify an authoritative pronouncement. Because when I say halakha, I'm just repeating what the hachamim taught us in the Bet Din. If what you have stated as halakha says a rabbinic expression, we shall accept it, right? Im halakha nekabel ve'im ladin yesh teshuvah. But if it is a deen, a judgment, that is an opinion based on juridical reasoning, it is debatable, right? So my own personal perspective as such doesn't have authority, even if it's intelligent and articulate. The primary difference between halakha and Haggadah is formal. It pertains to the mode of transmission. Haggadah is concerned with communicating the sense, right? I want to give you an idea, right? The fact that the narrator could use his own words and thus effectively communicate with the public made Haggadah the best vehicle for the narration of stories aimed at exposing the public to the teaching of scripture and rabbinic law. And this is why the stories of the Gemara are referred to as Haggadot, because when you want to convey a story, you want to convey it in your own words. Like there's a certain theatrical element. You're going to choose the words. You want to create some ideas and certain feelings. That's why you say a story. In halakha, all that is completely irrelevant, right? So that's why Haggadah was a mode of transmission used to convey stories more so than other modes, more so than the halakha mode of transmission. I'm just looking to see at footnote 53. Okay. Footnote 53. It reads, Si Sotah, Si Hagigah, Si Sifre Baba Batra. Haggadah also designates the Shabbat's homily pronounced by the head of the academy. So the derasha given on Shabbat afternoon by the Rosh Yeshiva was a Haggadah. The reason why the Haggadah draws the heart of the audience like wine or water may be related to the fact that, as indicated by Elias Levita, this term in Aramaic translates the Hebrew moshech, to draw, to pull. Interesting. Right, so lehagid, it means also interesting. So it's related, again, I'm reading that again. The reason why the Haggadah draws the heart of the audience like water, so that's what the Hachamim say, right? Or like wine or like water. So that could be related to the idea that in Aramaic translates moshech, to pull. So this term, Haggadah, is an Aramaic of to draw, to pull. Interesting. It also translates to drip, to flow, to incline favorably. For example, you have in Pirashat Ha'azinu, Ya'arofka matar likhi tizal katal imrati. So my words should drip down like water. Interesting. Okay. Let's go back to the main text. The object of halakha is to hand down the text, not the sense of the text. Right? We know that already. Because if I know the halakha be'al peh, right? I know the halakha be'al peh. I know כל הזבחים שנזבחו שלא לשמן כשרים, אלא שלא עלו לבעלים לשם חובה, חוץ מן הפסח מן חטאת. I know that halakha be'al peh. That halakha has authority, whether I understand what I just said, or whether I don't understand what I just said. It has authority by virtue of the fact that it's a halakha. Right? So I'm handing down the text. And once my child knows that text, the text has authority. One who is gamir, fluent in the text of halakha, may not necessarily be savir, fluent in the concept of halakha, and vice versa. Those are two concepts. Gavir means you understand the words. I misspoke. you know the words. You know the words perfectly. That's gamir. Savir means you understand the concepts being expressed. So you can have somebody who's gamir and not savir, or somebody who's savir and not gamir. Some scholars recognized as experts in one area, but not in the other. Right? To merit appointment as a judge, one had to be both gamir and savir. Right? It's very interesting. Sometimes the transmitter himself did not know the sense of the text that he was handing down. Right. Right. And the fact that you don't know the meaning of the text doesn't matter. It's still authoritative. Looking at footnote 56, Mishnah Para Nida Nedarim, even Yehuda Nasi had second thoughts about the meaning of a tradition that he himself had formulated, right? He's the one who formulated the Mishnah, and still he can have second thoughts about what it means. Thus, the expression, Hu Tanela, Hu Amarla. It's an expression in the Gemara, which means not only was he the one who transmitted the text, he also explained it. He transmitted the Tannaitic source, and he explained it. Occasionally, the transmitter objected to the opinion that he himself had transmitted, right? So you can have a situation like the beginning of Masechet Ketuvot, where Rav Yosef, he transmits a text, but he disagrees with the text that he transmits. I think he brings that. Yeah, here, Ketuvot, 2a. Rav Yosef objected to the view that he transmitted in the name of Shemuel, a point occasionally overlooked in the explanation of that passage. Right, and because the Mefarshim we're not all privy to this idea that you can transmit a text and not understand the text. They couldn't understand how can it be that Rav Yosef is transmitting the text and then disagreeing with the text that he transmitted. So there was a certain shinui grisaot that took place there. Accordingly, there's no point, but my father says there is no point to the emendation suggested by Tosafot, the deleting Rav Yosef, contrary to well-established tradition. So in order to solve that problem, the Tosafot suggests that perhaps Rav Yosef was not the transmitter of the halacha, and in that way they solve a problem. How can Rav Yosef disagree with the halacha he transmitted? But again, not necessary. Moreover, even if one were to accept the reading of the Tosafot, it would still be wrong to attribute the suggestive of an alternative version, Ella itmar achi itmar to Rav Yosef, since syntax would demand Ella Amar Rav Yosef. Right. So if it was that Rav Yosef is the one who's giving an alternative version of the halacha, it would say Ella Amar Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef transmits the halacha thusly. Amar means these are the words, right? But it says itmar achi itmar. If you're going to transmit this as an itmar, then the itmar should be as follows. It doesn't quite follow the idea that Rav Yosef is amending the language. That he had an alternative. He is amending the language. That he had an alternative tradition of what halacha is. Rabbi Chiya too disagreed with the tradition that he transmitted. See Palestinian Talmud Bava Messiah. I hope the word Palestinian didn't offend anybody. It's so funny how ignorant people are today. I mean, they're just complete ignorance. Up is down, down is up, left is right, right is left. It is noteworthy that Rabbi Chaya also appears to disagree with the tradition that he transmitted in Eruvin. So you have this in the Gemara where somebody transmits a tradition and he disagrees with the transmission of the tradition himself. Let's finish the paragraph back in the main text. Ideally, a tradition could be learned in large groups. When are the words of the Torah correctly said? Ask the rabbis. When their transmitter received them in an assembly. Because when it's in a large group, everybody remembers the halakha together and everybody recites it together, and therefore there could be no mistake as to what the halakha is saying in terms of the actual words. So that's why we wanted to publicize the halachot, because since they are authoritative, everybody should know these halachot. And we're going to stop here.